Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. Welcome to Getting Rich Together. Today we are talking to Amber Allen. She is the CEO and founder of AA Labs, a leader in creating digital worlds and immersive technology. In addition to her work at AA, Amber is an active board member at the University of Texas's Game Development and Design program, the Fashion Institute of Technology, the Radin Science Foundation, and the Center for Child Protection. She also serves as the chair of Technology Network for YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. I'm thrilled to be able to call Amber a friend, someone who I look up to deeply. And in today's conversation, I am extremely struck by Amber's authenticity, vulnerability, and how she's been able to inject joy into all of these really beautiful and complicated parts of life. So let's tune in. Amber Allen, you brilliant woman. Thank you so much for joining me on Getting Rich Together. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know what? One of the things that I'm so excited about our conversation today is, as I have gotten to know you, I've seen you as a prolific business owner and entrepreneur. I've seen you wear the most incredible shoes, outfits, handbags. And I know that obviously every fabulous purchase and every incredible opportunity you have to share yourself with the world, you're always evangelizing your business, what you stand for, your values. And so today I'm excited to peel it back and hear from where it first started. So I'd love to kickstart the conversation around money, around wealth, really starting from the beginning, Amber. What was life growing up for you? What were the money stories and conversations that were told to you that you heard as a young child?
Well, I mean, I grew up really poor. So money was something that was fleeting. But what is interesting is, as you asked that question, certain things popped in my head of like, I remember being like 11 or 12 years old and getting to go and like bundle firewood with my dad. And so he was always doing like side projects. He was vice president of a Bible college, which didn't make much money. So he was also an entrepreneur and he would have all these side gigs. And I was a daddy's girl. And so I would go and I'd be like, probably from like age of 9 to 12, we'd bundle firewood and we'd deliver it and $5 a bundle or $10. And then when I became a teenager, he let me go with him. And I was able to get my friends, most of my guy friends, my girls friends wouldn't do it, but we'd go and sell roses. And so you could sell roses. And the farther you drove, the more money you could make, farther from Tyler. And so I guess my whole point was I kind of learned the economics right out of the beginning.
So the further you would drive, the more money you would make. So you had a very interesting young experience in business, in the psychology of selling, and sort of understanding like markets. Like, how did that shape you as you went from being a young girl, seeing how money was made, how money was spent? How did that start to inform you as you were growing up and sort of entering into those college years?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I watched is we would do these roses, even as a kid, and you'd count it out, it'd be dollar bills. And I mean, it's very physical, and you count money, and I remember my parents didn't save very much. So I would find ways of like taking the money and like hiding it and then bringing it out when they needed it. It was kind of that way of like looking at how do you save for a rainy day? And I think that was one of the things that it's fascinating, at least for me personally, is like when you grow up and you don't have anything, then it's like you can take bigger risks because I know how it is to live without it. And I can live just fine. So it's the good and the bad, I think, as I've learned, to your point, as you get older, of how you learn to save if you weren't taught it growing up.
Mm-hmm. So when you exited college and you went into the workforce, how did these stories around money impact your decisions to, let's say, put money in a 401k? For me personally, it took me a long time to even realize that like that was something I should do. So what was it like for you in those early stages of thinking about your money, where to spend it? When did you start investing or thinking about it more deeply?
Right out of like during college. So I paid for my college. And so I was working 3 jobs. And so I think what's interesting is that was one of my first great examples of what you pay for, you get what you get. And so I wanted to take certain classes and the professors wouldn't let me. There was an astrophysics class I wanted to take or the curriculum they wouldn't let me take it. They said I had to have prerequisites. And I'm like, but I'm paying for my schooling. So I talked to the professor and he's like, well, just take it non-accredited. And so I actually am self-made. I don't have a finished degree, but I have 160 hours because I took classes that I wanted to learn because I looked at education as I was paying for it. Why would I pay for something that was so expensive? Why would I pay for something that I couldn't use? And I think that's what I've always looked at as stuff or things, or as you talk about, like, as you look at stuff growing, right? As you start making money or things, credit card debt. I got in credit card debt when I was young. And I was like, I hated that and figured out how to get out of it. Worked a lot of side jobs while I was working at Disney and never had credit card debt after that. I didn't like being upside down owing somebody. It was like always living a life for somebody else.
That's powerful. That's a really powerful statement about owning your life and being able to do what it is you want to do and own the power within really having money. You know, as a woman, I think that money really gives us access, right? It gives us all of these opportunities that otherwise may not necessarily be handed over to us. So as you looked at sort of your money journey and story between having a corporate life, which you had a very successful corporate career, and then moving that and transitioning that to entrepreneurialism and starting a very successful business, what are some of the money lessons and stories that have maybe you've had to break or transfer or change between corporate Amber and then entrepreneurial hustler business owner Amber?
Oh, yeah. And man, I definitely have a milestone moment. I think life is very much that way, where you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out when you're doing something as big as leaving a corporate world and doing the entrepreneur. And I had started this business and I was like, you know what? If I can just make $60,000 at the end of the year, I can put that as my goal. And that is worth starting a business for. And then I'll get right. And it'll grow bigger. And I remember pretty much kind of being 1 foot in. And I was working on a project. I'd started an event company, and a very large, one of the big fives, contacted me and wanted me to come and work with. And I got all the way to the final round of the interview. And I was like, they'll always be there. And this is the only opportunity that I know of that I've already stepped out. I either need to go all the way in and do this or go ahead back to the corporate world. But there's not this 1 foot out. And so I actually didn't even do the final round of the interview. That year, I made $1.5 million in my very first year.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, continue, Amber. Holy bananas. I didn't know that.
Yeah, my goal was 65. And there was just me. It was a consultancy. I'd built this company, I'd hired contract. And it was fascinating. The second year we went up to 4.5. The next year we were at 6 million. The next year we were at 8. Then we did 10 and all the way up to 12. And I was sole founder. So it was all the stress of like scaling and building a business. But remember, I mean, I was lucky to make growing up, right? It was like most of my family ever made was 25,000 a year. It was so not real almost. And what was real was the creating, was the building. And it never, for me, was about the money. It was about the passion, like the curiosity. Ooh, can I build that? Ooh, how do I build an AR? What do I create in this, right? And so I just always found that fascinating because then the money came. But when I would go for a company or a job for the money, I never would last very long because it's just never enough for me anyways.
Yeah.
You know?
I see that and I experience that of you and of how in alignment you are with your purpose and how in your curiosity and how you create. It's really a beautiful thing to see in you as you are in the world. As you were starting to see more wealth and money than you had ever had before, what did that do for you in terms of spending? You know, making that first $1 million that year and then increasingly making more and more. What did you spend your money on? How did you feel about that? What was that like sharing it with your family?
I think one of the things was having it seemed, and remember, this has been, my business is about 11 years old. So this has been over 11 years, right? And so I've learned so much more now. In the beginning, I had lived up to a certain point with a very tight budget because it didn't have a lot of money. And so budgets kind of went out the window. And I think one of the biggest lessons looking back for me was I think true wealth comes from sticking to the same principles and not seeing it as a whole bunch of zeros in your bank account. I don't know if that makes sense, but like if you only are used to seeing $100 and then all of a sudden there's 20,000 and then there's 100,000, then you're like, oh, I can just spend anything I want my money on. But there isn't a money tree, right? And there will always be the high times and the low times. And so I think that was the fascinating thing of like, I did pick up one principle that I love that I did is I'm a big watch girl. I love me some watches. I love how like a watch is something that's been developed over, hundreds of years, and it's 25 to 36 little pieces inside of how it makes. It's so analog, and I'm such a techie digital girl. And so when I hit my first 10 million in my company, I went to the Watch Expo down in Newport and I bought a used Patek watch, and it was so expensive. And it was so beautiful. And to this day, I love that watch, It was like a milestone watch. And now I have this Panera. I love my Panerais. I'm a Panerai girl, right? And so it's like I had another milestone later and I bought my Panerai. And it's like probably the two favorite things I own because they're milestones for me, right? They represent milestones instead of just.
I love that. And so as a founder and entrepreneur who's building a very impactful business, and now having been at the head of your business for so long, at what point did you say, now as a female entrepreneur, as a business owner, I'm going to start making more strategic investments, either in as an angel, making angel checks, more actively working with wealth managers? What were sort of the first steps that you took? And at what point did you start to really be more active with investing your resources?
I had some good advice from a mentor, a guy in my life that had built some huge companies. And he's like, your first investment should always be in yourself. And so, 3 years ago, I took a huge risk and I have a new SaaS product that is just really good, but it's innovative. And so it's a little early, but, we've still got like big companies on it like Google and Dell and all. But I invested quite a bit of my own money in this company to get it because I wanted to own a lot of the equity of the business. And as a sole founder, it was one of those things. So having the money to be able to roll it in, it was pretty amazing. And, and being able to, and someone else told me, like, if you're going to invest, make sure it's something that you understand. So for me personally, I do angel investing. And, I've probably only done about, less than $500,000 of different investments in different companies. But it's been amazing to like look at the companies and go, oh, that founder is building this and I can see the hole in the market for that. Or I really believe in this person. And look, one of the things nobody ever told me is how long some of these investments take. It's not like I had anybody teaching me this stuff. So I was like, cool, I'm going to put this money in here and like in a year or two, I'm going to get that back. No, it's like 5 or 10 years. Why does nobody tell you that?
They don't tell you. It's so crazy. They just say, hey, write a check. This is exciting. But there's no one who's teaching us about allocation, right? How much money do you put in different risky areas? Of course.
Exactly. And then like, what is a pre and a post on a safe valuation? Like these are these basic things for some that have been erased around it and that invest that are not common knowledge. You're not in that space. Like, girl, you ask me anything about tech, I can tell you. But some of these things have definitely been YouTube videos.
Absolutely. So that was going to be one of my other questions, which is in looking at sort of personal finance and wealth building, where do you get your information from? How are you learning about new opportunities and new things?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've been extremely lucky in the last few years. I fell in love and I am engaged and he is so brilliant. And so he's taught me these principles of saving. And I found, I'm a video gamer, right? So certain things just don't always I don't understand. If I want it, I'll just get it. And there's this app that I'm using now called YNAB, or You Need a Budget. Life changing. Because it's like these little envelope systems and it's all a digital, but I can see where everything goes. And so for me, I'm extremely busy. My business takes so much of my time, and then obviously the other curiosity rabbit holes you get to do. And so having something that once a week I sit down, I reconcile at the end of the month, and I can see every penny, where it's going and why it's going there, has really been amazing. I've saved more money making less because I've got this new business than I did when I was making more. And I think that's a really fascinating lesson, right? Because if it's just in a bank account and I'm investing it, it's one thing. If I can actually see where I spend my money, then I actually go, oh, I spent X on health and wellness, or I spent X on shopping. And I never feel bad about my travel. I love to travel, right? I work and create to have experiences. It's been amazing to be like, here's a budget. I know probably people listen, they'll be like, well, of course. But it's one of those things where if you prioritize other things in your life, then you need the tools that help you find the shortcuts for the things that you may not be as brilliant.
I think that's incredible. You said so many gems just right there. I think this idea of looking at a budget or as tools to help us really exercise our value. Money is an opportunity for you to show your value. So today, Amber, what does money mean to you? What does getting rich or being wealthy mean? What are those feelings?
I think it's freedom. I have a charity that I really love, Center for Child Protection, that helps with battered kids. And I love that I can be one of their top donors, right? And it's not about being the donors. It's about, I want to make an impact in that, right? And so I've realized that the dollars that I spend today means there's bigger amount of dollars tomorrow I will not have. And so I think that's the biggest lesson that I have learned, making a lot of money and then building new companies and being in different places in life. Yeah, I think the dollars that I have now, everything that I have, I evaluate, will it be worth more down the road in stocks or in things like that I can then put it towards something that helps me or my family or the groups that I really care about.
Really beautiful. It's almost looking at legacy planning today and thinking about, how finances have an impact to really change things today and for tomorrow. With respect to legacy and how you see this body of work that you're building, the causes and charities you can support, as you're looking into the future, Amber, who's looking back on her beautiful and dynamic life, what are some of the points of legacy that you hope to create in this lifetime?
Play. I think play is the coolest thing that people don't do enough of. And play just makes curiosity, it just makes you be more creative. It makes you more happy. It makes you more open. And so I want my legacy to be something that creates, the platforms that I build, the technology, the tools that I share with people. I want it to be something that helps people have more play in their life. And, it's just, play is everything from going for a hike, playing pickleball, to arcade games. Those are the things that reset our brain. And I think that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about in building. And I think that's also what money is supposed to be about. Money is supposed to be able to allow us to do that. I've been so poor where you didn't know, you didn't have electricity and you didn't know where food was going to come from. But once we get lucky and we at least have the bases, then what are the things that bring us true joy? And I don't think buying stuff just for that endorphin hit, because I've done that. But girl, I do love me a good Prada. A good Prada bag that is going to last me. I have one that's 10 years and it's just beautiful. And when I look at it, it just makes me happy. So I think there's these different ways of true joy is brought to a person.
I love that. I think it's so wonderful to acknowledge that even though people say money doesn't buy you happiness, financial security can really help unlock a whole world of play and enjoyment and joy. And it's easy to say money doesn't buy you those things or buy you satisfaction if you haven't necessarily gone through periods of life where you understand what it's truly like to be without. To be able to have those contrasting experiences, I think, is a valuable gift and lesson that I don't think you can teach anyone. It's a true lived experience.
Yeah, that makes me, it's when I was naming my company, my daddy was still alive. And I was asking, I was like, Daddy, I don't know how to name this company. And he goes, girl, you grew up with nothing. And he goes, and someday you may have nothing again. He goes, when it comes to money, he's like, but your reputation you always have. And he goes, you lose that, you might as well just hang up your hat. Right. And I think that's something I've always held on to, is it's like money will come, money will go. You'll have joys from a certain thing and then it won't bring you joy anymore. Right. But as long as, and I think that's where the play comes into, because if your reputation is something that you can hang your hat on, then people will respect and you'll have opportunity around to do it over again or to build something else. And that isn't a money thing. That's a respect thing. That's your word. That's a trust. And I think that's how you get money down the road.
I think that as you're thinking about the next stages in building your business, the things that you need, what are some ways in which I or the audience can amplify and support you on your journey?
I have always tapped into the people around me, right? Like a call before this with somebody I went to high school with that works at Walmart that I think would be a great client. So I was like, awesome, let me pick your brain on, this, how someone's using our product and would it work for this, right? So I am a big believer in the power of smart advice. And the product that I'm building is a unique category. But what's so great about it is it helps people pay attention and focus, but uses the principles of video games, which I've been in for 20 years. You can't police people, babe. You have to create something that lets them enjoy and have fun and want to be present, right? And that's what I've built. And so I think the best thing I could ever ask of anybody is that they check it out and give me their advice on, hey, I love when people do that. They'll text me the other day. Someone texted me, hey, your website's doing this and it doesn't make sense. Okay, wonderful. What should I do? I'm only here because of the smart people around me. So I think that is.
I totally agree with that. I think we're better off with the people. If someone's going to take the time to write you and tell you that something's wrong or something needs to be looked at, that's a great friend, right?
Agreed. Because there's nothing worse than being in a vacuum thinking everything is great. And other people are like, oh, honey, she's got spinach in her teeth. Well, my goodness, tell me.
So one other question that I think would be so interesting to get your perspective on is really what you're talking about, the power of community. Now, Amber, I know that you are well networked. You know lots of different people. You're known in entrepreneurial environments across the country. Can you explain a little bit about how community and the women around you in particular, and maybe even also the men around you, have helped supported you to think about maybe ongoing conversations around money, wealth, and really, I think the topic here is maybe opportunity, right? What role has community really played in this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in community groups. So I'm a part of the, YPO, the Young Presidents Org. I'm part of the Renegades, the women's group. And so I want my advice and community to be men and women and all kinds, all demographics, all groups of people. And it's the listening, knowing the right questions to ask sometimes is the piece that I'm still learning. So, because if you ask the right questions, you get so much more valuable advice. I think that a big piece of that community and those groups is not always asking, what can you do for me, but what can I do for you? And I know it's kind of cliche, but it's true, because if you're really listening to what somebody needs or is trying to build, there's so many little nuggets in there that you'll also learn yourself. But I will say, on the other side of that, I think it's also, I love me some good rabbit holes. So like at the new year, I started this group called the Curiosity Gang. And I'd met these amazing women that people had been introducing me to. And we were all very busy and execs, and it's hard to find time. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put us together. And our whole thing is about learning. And so we did something on biohacking. We're going to do a perfume one. We're doing an art one. And so like once a month, we'll just get together and one of the group will pull it together and be able to go learn something. And it doesn't have to be about work. It's just learning.
Yeah, I think that life experience, learning, curiosity, travel, right? It's like beyond sort of buying things here and there, investing in our own expansion as humans is really just such an incredible thing to be so actively participatory in. Obviously, having resources to do that is something that I think is really an important way of allocating those funds are to growing who we are. I know travel is something you love and adore, amongst other things. I would love to hear, Amber, as we think about ways in which we're spending money and time and energy, what have been some of your most impactful ways of spending money on travel or anything else? And what are you looking forward to? And are there any sort of, I don't know, big ticket items for your next milestone that you're excited to purchase?
Yeah. I do love to travel. And if I do not get to travel, I've noticed the well of my creativity just kind of dries up because there's just nothing better than being around people of different ideas and that think differently, or the culture is different. To your point, is like, I remember one trip was like, went and I was working in the Philippines, and I just went to some island and just went away for 2 days. And I'm sitting on this beach talking to this gentleman that was like like in his 60s. And we had these life conversations 9 years later. I still remember. And I think that's travel, right? Is like hearing how people think differently, or, the night train from Salzburg to Venice. It's the best. And it's the best because, can I tell you, you spend $300 and you get your transportation and your food and your location all in one. And you sleep and you arrive there and you can do wine and cheese. And so it's like the little things, right? That having resources and being able to utilize them on doesn't always have to be the most expensive. It's the thing that adds the most value to you.
I love that. So what's on the horizon then? What are some of the things of value and meaning? Obviously, darling, you're planning an incredible wedding. So that seems like a fantastic use of time and resources. But how is that going? And what else are you thinking about?
Yeah, so I haven't even started that yet. So I decided I just want it to be a big party. And as long as there's barbecue and live music, we'll be all right. But, it is interesting, though, because for 40 something years of my life, it's been me taking care of myself and my business and, my family in my life, my friends, they're my family. And it's interesting now looking at starting a family of my own and the costs and the things that come with that. And the different milestones of money that you're like, oh, wait, I want to have a home that my kids can grow up. Because I had, 20 different houses I lived in growing up. It'd be nice to have one. And so these different things that money changes when you realize that for me, you're talking about the biggest milestone. I think it's changed because it's not just me and what I want to spend my money on for me. It's what do I want to spend my money on for my family. So it changes things as a different perspective a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. I still need my play, and my arcade room will still be in my house. So
I love that. So have you and your fiance had conversations around money? Is it part of your relationship right now? Do you guys talk about it? Like, how do you look at money in terms of your most intimate relation?
Yeah, no, we definitely do. I mean, he is the one that introduced me to the YNAB app. That was so just really cool for me to learn a different ways and style. And so, yeah, we do. I mean, look, I'm more of a live life with the money, and he's more of a let's save it with the money. So it's been something that we from day one have discussed, because I mean, you grow up in a home that doesn't have money is always a topic, and it's not a topic of love. So it's one of those things that has always been important for me to have a conversation around. And I think people should. And it's the same thing as what you're doing here. It's like talking about money and saving or spending or where you get your joy it's important. If we think it's something we just don't ever talk about, then it's not something we ever learn about.
Amen, Amber. That is so powerful. If it's not something we talk about, we won't learn about it. And as women, we have just not been historically encouraged to talk openly about money and what we're doing with it and what it means to us. So
one good point on what you just said is, or even investing together. When I did my friends and family round, I had the men and women on my advisory boards, right? And it invested, but it was interesting because it was a couple of the gentlemen who have built big businesses, sold them, owns private equity funds. And they're like, you should let people invest. If you're going in, you've got a successful business. They want to put some skin in the game. And I was like, I had always looked at it as me asking a favor of them. And it was an interesting way of looking at, I would like them to be able to have some of the upside as well for what I'm building. And it was fascinating of 80% of my guy friends invested in my business and less than 3% of my women friends invested in my, and multiple times it was, well, I don't want this to ruin our friendship. And it was so fascinating, the different way that people looked at it, right? It really fascinating. One looked at it as, I would like to be a part of this because I know you're going to succeed. And the other was, if you don't succeed, it'll hurt our friendship. And I think that is one thing that we really should look at of, are we asking for favors, switching it on its head sometimes in our investment wise and in what we build.
Yes, I think that you're addressing that every woman founder experience and goes through. How can I share with people what I'm building and how big it is, and that you investing in me is something that pretty much all men invest in each other.
Yeah.
It's how they get wealthy. They say, hey, I'm building this business, I'll let you in. Hey, I'm building this other business, I'll let you in. And it's really a far more common conversation where you actually want to invest in your friends, because if they succeed, you succeed. And if they don't succeed this time, they will the next time.
Yeah.
And so it's not really about, just the one business or the one opportunity. It's about taking bets and making risk and believing in someone who you actually do know has the grit and the capabilities and the desire to succeed. And if it's not this time, it's the next time. And so I think the conflation between supporting your friend or supporting the friendship, actually throwing in $5,000 into an SPV actually just shows a vote of confidence. And really, that is the difference between buying a handbag, right? Or being able to invest in your friend's business, right?
Yeah.
That potentially has incredible upside and certainly shows your where your values are, and so I think that's really interesting that you bring that up. How, walking away from that experience, seeing how few of your women friends invested, obviously, I mean, big question here. I don't know if you'll have the answer, but will you be fundraising again? And if so, would you ever take a different approach to, inviting your female friendships into the next round?
You know what I find fascinating is later, after the Friends and Family round was done, I went back to a few of them and asked some questions on, because then it was already closed, right? So there wasn't like a feeling like they felt like they're being sold to. Here's what I found fascinating. My data after the conversations, and I've had this conversation now, it was 2 years ago, right? When I did that round, it was asking the questions. Remember, we brought this up earlier in the podcast. They felt that it was rude to ask certain financial questions that the guy friends had no problem asking. Well, where's your EBIT? What is your plan to do this? How are you doing that? Well, how are you going to do that? It was I think sometimes, and maybe this is just my Southern roots of, I remember when I read the book, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office in my young 20s, and it was so good for me because it was so different. But not, what I find fascinating is sometimes we don't want to ask, we don't want to be, it's the same reason in my product. Get this, in Zoom, if you do a big company meeting, it's literally proven, men will ask more questions. In my product, we have a 40% increase in women asking questions. Do you want to know
why?
There's a microphone. It's a visual product, right? So you can move around, and there's a microphone in the theater room that says, line up with your question. The women line up. There's this politeness that is taught, right? And if there's a politeness, then that goes also with investing. I am not a charity. I don't need a person to give me $5,000. But if they see what I'm building and they can help build it and they see the numbers and it makes sense, then it's a great investment for them. And I think it starts with questions, babe. We have to be okay with uncomfortable questions. Uncomfortable questions on, why are you comfortable buying a Prada bag? Why are you comfortable investing in this company? And if we started with that, maybe we'd start investing.
Heck yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I love it. That is so juicy. Amber Allen, you are an incredible woman, led an incredible life. I'm so excited to see the rest of your life unfold with the same amount of integrity, values, joy, playfulness. You are an inspiration to myself, to many women out there, and to men. What you're building and your background in gaming and what you've been building with AR and how you're leading technology is so incredible. I'm grateful to have you on today's podcast. If there was one last thing that you would want to share about money, about wealth, about yourself, what would that be?
Sometimes we don't need to take life so serious. It's my favorite quote that I love saying is every day that childlike Amber high fives adult Amber, I won. And I think sometimes we just overthink it all. And if we really just look at with the child, when we had the childlike wonder, how would they feel how we live life? And just look through that lens.
I think we'd all be high-fiving our inner children for just how far we've come and how proud our inner children are of the women we are today.
I agree.
Thank you so much for joining today, Amber. You are a gift.
So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.